The glass is broken, and it's time to talk some Vols on a Tuesday morning edition of RKW. Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling. Joined by VolQuest's and On Three's Austin Price, as we are every Tuesday morning here on the show. What's up, Austin?
Well, I really think you get shortchanged. I think at least one day a week they ought to put your name first.
You know what, Austin? That's a great idea. That's a great idea. You're the first person with not bowling in their last name to suggest that, I think.
I mean, maybe on Fridays when Brent Hubbs is on.
There you go.
There you go.
Hey, I have no problem with that. Hey, whatever we want to call it, just call me something, okay, Austin?
I was told that you worked it into your contract where your name had to be first.
I'm a lowly offensive lineman. When we get opportunities to get something, we take it, okay? So, yes, that was in my contract, okay, not to be removed.
Austin Price with us. Austin, have you made any more sense of the Mississippi State loss last week? And has your opinion of this Tennessee basketball team's March ceiling changed after last week's loss?
It hasn't. I mean, you look around college basketball, Will, and, I mean, some of the best teams in the country either didn't make the championship game in their conference tournament or did not win their conference championship game. So, no, I think, this is a basketball team that was kind of, for whatever reason, half in, half out in the conference tournament. Mississippi State played more hungry. They played more motivated. Sometimes I think, a team can be a bad matchup for a school, which is why I think it's all about matchups. And I think when you look at Tennessee's draw, I think it's a pretty favorable draw. I mean, if they can make it out of this weekend, they're going to be playing either South Carolina, Creighton, Akron, or one more school, a little off the top of my head, playing for the right to go to the Final Four. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better draw, in my opinion, for Tennessee. And so, I like their draw. I think they'll bounce back, and I'd be surprised if the team we saw in Nashville is a team that we see, come Thursday night at 9:20.
Austin Price of VolQuest's with us. Austin, do you get the sense that this team still can play with that same level of confidence and swagger it took on the road to Columbia and to Tuscaloosa? Because it just didn't look like they were in the same mindset here in Nashville for whatever reason.
I do. I really do. I mean, honestly, if you think back, a little over a week ago, they're playing Kentucky for a chance to go 4-0 in what was labeled this unbelievable gauntlet of a stretch. They lose by 4 at home to a top 15 Kentucky team that can score with anybody in the country. Nobody's going to bat an eye at losing to Kentucky. It's just the Mississippi State game that sticks out like such a sore thumb, right? It had Tennessee beat Mississippi State and then lose to Auburn on Saturday. Is there the gnashing of teeth that we've seen since, Friday afternoon? Probably not. It's just that game that kind of sticks in everybody's craw. But again, how many teams didn't make either to Saturday or didn't make the championship game or didn't win the championship game in their conference tournament as prohibitive favorites, as the 1 seed? It happened a lot. And so Houston didn't win. Purdue didn't win. North Carolina didn't win. I mean, you can keep going right down the line of these 1 seeds that did not make it, either to the championship game or did not win their conference tournament. So, I think it's just one game. You flush it, you get back up and see what happens come Thursday night. At the end of the day, this comes down to making shots. I think this team's defense will travel. Dalton Connect will travel. My X factor player is Jordan Gainey. It does not seem like Zakai Ziegler is going to be affected by this. Jonas Adu will not be affected, I do not believe. Santi doesn't seem like he's got any confidence at all. So, he's hesitant to shoot. So that's why I make Gainey my X factor guy, because he's going to keep putting up shots when he's in the game regardless. He has no conscience, whether he makes 4 for 4 or 0 for 15. He's going to keep shooting. And I think that's the kind of mindset you've got to have come March. You can't be hesitant, which is why I think, a guy like Santi right now is, he's got to find other ways to be effective or it's really playing 4-on-5 at times.
Austin Price of VolQuest's and On 3 with us this morning. Austin, how sports isn't fair at all. The way people judge it, the way we look at it, what happens, how you win, lose, referees, all that type of stuff, right? But when it comes down to Rick Barnes and the perception of him from the Kentucky game, from the Mississippi State game, and just the history of his play or his coaching in the tournament, how much of this is unfair to judge him based off those games and how his teams play on the court? I heard Ron Slay, Mr. Worldwide now, say the other day that he was talking to Tubby Smith at the SEC tournament. And Tubby said, man, I got to call Coach Barnes because the way those guys play, he's going to run them into the dirt because he has an expectation. And sometimes your coaching and your message may not actually just get through to the guys on the court, but that's not necessarily anything towards you that's wrong. It might just be the players can't make their shots. How much of that is fair or unfair?
I mean, I think any criticism is fair. Now, when you look at the totality of everything, but I think if you're looking year to year, probably unfair because there are different circumstances that a lot of times the common public doesn't know in every sport. I mean, Ramon, how many times did something going behind the scenes with the Steelers or when you were at Tennessee that the common fan had no clue about? And it affected how you played, how the team played, how it altered how games transpired. Like sometimes the common fan doesn't know everything that's going on, and so thus they don't understand why you get from point A to point B. And so I think each year individually is different. I think the totality of it, though, I think, it can be judged, however it needs to be judged. But I think each year it can change depending on the circumstance.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. I just had to ask that because it will be fascinating. And I heard Ron says, he can't put the ball in the hoop for him. But that's neither here nor there. When it comes down to what else is going on up at Rocky Top, these morning practices have just kicked off with spring ball. What are you looking forward to as far as them getting better this offseason? I've seen some clips, of course, of guys and transfers coming in. Seem like Boo Carter is doing his thing, which his name cannot stay out of the headlines in a good way.
100%. I mean, again, he just carries himself in such a way, and Boo is fantastic. He's going to speak with the media later this morning after practice. We'll actually get to see 9 periods this morning. Most will see all spring. They don't have the pads on, but, we'll still get to see them run around. It's hard to get a real judge on linemen, but, you can definitely get a feel on the skill guys. And Tennessee, I think, does have a different set of skill players that they had a year ago. At wide receiver, they're deeper, they're more athletic, they're faster. In the secondary, you had a lot of change. The additions of people like Caleb Beasley and Boo Carter, and then the addition of guys like Jacoby Thomas, transfer from MTSU, and Jermon McCoy, the DB from Oregon State. So, I love the morning practices. It kind of gets the day off to a hot start after I get my kids off to school, and it will be interesting to kind of just see some of those guys get out there and run around for more than just a couple periods that we normally get to see.
Austin Price of VolQuest joining us this morning on RK Dub. So we saw, some of these newcomers, 22 newcomers. You saw a little of them during the bowl practices, but this is a little bit different with spring practice. How are they able to get acquainted, and how is this process for some of those new guys?
Well, I think it's an addition to what they saw in bowl practice for those guys that either watched or got to participate. For players like Caleb Beasley and Evan Spillman, who arrived this weekend and are going through practice and team activities for the first time, it's still a good jump start on fall practice. So, this spring is big for all these newcomers. You got 14 early enrollees, 8 transfers, so 22 new guys. You got players like Tyree Weathersby, who got hurt early in fall camp last year, and so hasn't, done a ton with the team. Now all of a sudden he's back ready to go. Keenan Peely's out there doing his thing. Tennessee is working on the helmet communication, so they've got some of the players like Peely with the with the speakers in the ears, and they're able to communicate with them, which is the new rule that's in college football. So a lot going on, but a lot of newcomers, a lot of new faces, and this spring's big for all those guys to kind of hit the ground running.
How basic too, and I've talked with, guys in the past at the college level and bigger programs, and I remember hearing, a lot of the guys saying, hey, some guys come in here, they're not as in shape, but they get to that point. Is that a lot of what spring practice is, just getting in the weight room, making sure you're getting to weight and you're ready to go once the season is there?
Yeah, and for the guys on offense, it's learning the pace of the offense. I mean, you heard last year McAllen Castles talk about after the bowl game having a talk with, Tennessee's newest tight end Holden Stays, the transfer from Notre Dame, and explained to him that it took him a full spring practice to understand the pacing because they go at such a pace. And so for a guy like Lance Hurd, this will be different. This pace will be different. So, I would bet his body looks vastly different come August 1 than it is going to be April 1. And that will be because of spring practice, understanding the pacing, and then the summer workouts. And that happened last year with John Campbell. I thought John Campbell transformed his body tremendously between spring practice and fall camp. And so, a lot of these guys, I think, will be able to take advantage of understanding kind of how Tennessee practices, the pace they practice at, the pace they play at, and it will be a benefit over the next few months.
Austin, who is the one player other than Nico Iamaleava you are most interested to watch during spring practice?
Oh, I have to name more than one, Will.
Okay, that's
a lot. There's
allowed.
So many newcomers. I mean, I'm interested to see Jermod McCoy, Lance Hurd, and Chris Brass. Those are kind of my three. I'm interested to kind of see what they bring to the table because I think the addition of all three could really alter Tennessee's team success this fall. So, I really like McCoy a lot. I think he carries himself with a certain swagger, similar to Boo in a lot of ways. He's got, more experience than Boo, having, been a transfer from Oregon State. Two different positions, but I think that, similar in a lot of ways. Hurd obviously plays the position of most need at left tackle. And then Brazel is that, kind of big, lanky, could potentially be a game-changing receiver from Tulane. So I think all three have a chance to really impact Tennessee's success.
Oh.
Austin, I think we lost you there for a moment. You still got us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. Yeah, I cut out there for a minute. I was going to ask you about Nico, though, as well. Are you hearing that he is stepping more into that leadership role this spring? What are people saying around campus about Tennessee's new QB1?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's impressed with his leadership. He's always been a guy that kind of leads by example. I think he's gotten more vocal, and I think that pays the dividends as spring practice goes along.
As far as those second-year guys and guys that got to come up and make plays and make splash, man, what do we expect for a guy like Arian Carter, who has a lot of that P-word potential, it seems like, moving forward?
He's got to get fully healthy. I think, you want to see him continue to grasp, and see the game slow down. I mean, Ramon, how much did the game slow down for you, junior year, sophomore year, senior year? I mean, so for my liking, I think you want to see the game slow down.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other side I have to ask you is, will we close out on a 5-star tackle? Because it seems to me David Sanders in this recruiting cycle has somewhat fallen in love with Nico and George and all things Tennessee. And there's some of the latest things I've seen written about him. Is that real, or is it smoke screens when it comes down to the recruitment of a guy like him who will be a freshman and you ain't got to go into the portal to get somebody again?
Yeah, I think Tennessee's able to land one of these guys, whether it's Sanders, Utu, Jalen Matthews, Josh Petty, Juan Gaston. Tennessee's got several options at offensive tackle that are highly ranked guys, that are top 50 guys. Some of them top 10 players. Some of them potentially could be top 5 players. But Tennessee's in the mix with several offensive tackles in this cycle. Would be surprised if they don't land at least one and potentially two.
Austin, this was a question that was asked to Josh Heupel this week. I thought it was interesting, just talking about, if Tennessee's transfers can ease their way into kind of that transition period, or if they need to have a little bit of urgency. And with so many transfers nowadays, and you're getting to a new program, and like you said, you're learning new things, whether it be on offense and defense. Is there any type of extra time that you see now given by coaches, or is it just as urgent?
I think you have to have urgency.
Yeah.
There's got to be a drive. You can't kind of sit back. I mean, if Billy Amick didn't have urgency when he got here for Tennessee's baseball team, would he be having the success that he's having right now? A lot of these guys could be put in positions like Lance Hurd, your left tackle, right? I mean, it's not like he's having to set as the third team guy and work his way up. He's your number one. But I think he has to have urgency to pick up the offense, understand the pacing, and go from there. Same thing with a guy like Chris Brazzell, understanding the offense, understanding what is asked of him at the receiver position, I think is so critical. Maybe not every one of the transfers is as important. Tennessee's really deep in defensive line, so can Jackson Moy potentially not have as much urgency and it'd be okay? Sure. Now, you still want him to have that major urgency. But there are a few of them where they can't have kind of any kind of hiccup or trip. Like they need those guys to be really good and be players that can help Tennessee this fall. And, we've outlined several of them this morning.
He is Austin Price, joining us every Tuesday here on Ramon, Kayla, and Will at Austin Priceless, where you find him on Twitter. And Austin, we'll see next week if it's Will, Ramon, and Kayla. Who's to say? Thank you for joining us.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Austin.
All right, there's Austin Price with us this morning as he heads to the practice field